Hey guys, it's Doom49 and I'm going to be giving you guys some tips and tricks on how to be a much better pilot in Star Wars Battlefront, especially now that it's out on the PC. So to start it off, basically flying is completely different than what it used to be. At least it doesn't have that tug mechanism. It's completely changed. Before, there was this horrible tug mechanism that pulled your crosshair to the center of the screen. And now there's this little yellow triangle. That's actually where your mouse is moving, and it's actually tugging your crosshair towards that, which is a lot better. So if you kind of understand that, it makes it a lot easier to fly, because what you need to do is simply focus on your crosshair. It makes it a lot easier to focus. This does require a lot of practice to get really good at it, but just know that as long as you focus on your crosshair and move your mouse based on where the triangle is going, the crosshair will follow to it. So the whole reason behind this crazy flight mechanic is probably because it's for a console port to the PC. It's not a bad console port, but the idea is so that you could still use your controller if you wanted to use it on the PC. And this is really just a speculation, because otherwise I would have just had it wherever your crosshair is aiming is where your mouse goes, if that makes sense. Just regular aiming techniques, but it doesn't work like that. So that's the tip for how to fly with it. But here's another tip. Whenever you're flying, make sure you're always holding on to your right-click key. Just hold it. It auto-locks on to the opponent, which also brings in a new factor of dogfighting, which is why you're going to want to have to use your 1, 2, and 3. And in this case, since you're not in hero ships and you're in a TIE fighter or any of the other flying ships, you're going to want to use your number 1 for dogfights and getting in and out of battle. That's the main key to use it for. But keep in mind, you also have F1, F2, and F3. Now you're going to want to rebind your F1, F2, and F3 to keys on your mouse. In general, you have your 2 side keys, your forwards and backwards key on your mouse. Make sure you bind one of those keys to F2, what the F2 does. And F2 for flight mechanism is actually a special ability. And in general, for flying, F2 actually makes your ship go in reverse. So it literally does a U-turn and goes behind. So that is the best way I've found to dodging rockets and also shaking people off my tail, which is why I recommend using your F2 key to be bound to one of your keys on the side of your mouse, either your forward or backwards keys, it doesn't matter. And then you can bind either F1 or F3 to the other key on the side of your mouse. So now you have 2 ways of dodging rockets coming your way, and on top of that, you also have your number 1. As I mentioned earlier, the way you're going to use number 1 is to get into battle if you're spawning in, and also if you've already used your F1 or F2 key to dodge the opponent chasing you or rocket coming your way, and he's got another lock on you, you're going to have to use that ability. Now, in general, some vehicles have the number 1 as more armor, more shield, so you're going to want to use that as you try to weave in and out to dogfight the opponent. At the same time, for TIE fighters and TIE interceptors, you have a speed boost, so you're going to want to use number 1 to speed boost as you try to get out of the way, so they can't keep locking onto you. Now, another thing I can tell you is that every ship has its own flight mechanism, and that is really the radius that it can turn at. TIE fighters and X-Wings have a really quick turning mechanism. These things can turn on a dime, especially when they're in dogfights. And they also, if you notice, when they shoot, they have different rates of fire. Whereas TIE interceptors and A-Wings, they have a really slow radius of turning, but they do a lot of damage. They shoot a little bit slower, and that is where speed comes into play. If you continuously hold forward, you're just going to be going at full speed, but make sure to slow down or speed up depending on the situation. My best advice is to play with it. You're going to find that if you're in TIE fighters and X-Wings, you're finding that if you use full speed ahead, it's really easy to lock onto people and take them all out, because you don't have to worry about turning as much since you have a really quick turning radius and you can just weave around all over the place with full speed ahead. And sometimes it's actually really good to slow down to keep your lock onto an opponent who's actually trying to dogfight you. If you notice, I've slowed down fully here and I can lock onto this opponent and take him out easily and then back to speeding up. For A-Wings and TIE fighters, you're going to want to try maneuvering between a medium speed to no speed at all, really just slowing down as much as you can because of that poor turn radius. And at the same time, when you're getting locked on, speed up and weave in and out. One of the biggest tips I can tell you for dogfighting, especially now with this lock-on mechanism that continuously locks the opponent onto you, is use your environment. You're gonna have to go down. Just go straight down to the ground and use your environment. There's canyons, there's buildings to hide behind depending on the map you're playing on. Everything you can think of, use it to your advantage. Even if you have to go into a dogfighting zone where you see a lot of people fighting, fly into there, but when you get into there, start weaving left and right. So what do I mean by that? Especially now with the whole changes into flying, you can't lock on as much as you'd like. There's a really small window of where you'd lock on. That's why I say continue holding that right click button when you see an opponent. You can lock on to them, that's true, but you have to maintain a rough estimate of aim in order for it to lock on. As you notice here, it doesn't lock on right away, and as soon as he turned up, it lost its lock. So what do you do when you're in a dogfight? Weave, 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 weave left, weave right. Use your number one, especially after you've used your special ability, which is now bound to your mouse key, like your F1 or F2 or F3. After you've used those and it's on a cooldown, use your number one. Either if you're in an A-Wing or any of those vehicles that have increased armor, you're going to want to use that. But if you're in a TIE Fighter or TIE Interceptor, you're using the speed, and that's perfect because you're going to use that and you're going to weave left and right. So one of the things I do is I'll turn left fully until I get a full turn, and once I feel like I've turned completely to the left, I turn right and keep doing that left and right. And as I do that, I try to keep a general idea of the map to see what else is ahead of me so that maybe I can use my environment, or maybe I can get into a dogfighting zone and try to lose the opponent behind me by getting into that area, so they kind of get distracted with everything else around them. And you never know, maybe a teammate's going to come out of nowhere and start backing you up and shooting them off your tail. So that's my advice as to weaving. And most likely, if you weave enough, that cooldown on that special ability is going to go down, and you're going to be able to use it again and repeat the process. And maybe, especially if you've bound your special ability, which is F2, to one of your keys, you could go into a complete U-turn and end up on the tail of the opponent and be able to take them out. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, please do leave a like on it, leave a comment. I'd love reading your comments. I really enjoy it. If you want to share this video with your buddies, please do. It helps me out, and I will see you guys later.